Schema, schema, schema. Wherefore art thou schema? Okay, so it appears that Ahrefs may have put to bed the long-standing debate on whether or not schema is in fact important for AI visibility, albeit with some caveats. So they tracked 1,885 pages. And actually, as you scroll through this, it's a bit of a love letter to Ahrefs' tool base. So they tell you how they did the study, and it's like, we used this, and then we used Ahrefs' new agent tool, and then we used this. So that withstanding, the study seems pretty solid, just under 2,000 pages, where they added schema and then tracked what impact that had on AI visibility. Okay, so the first thing that they did was analyze 6 million URLs and found that schema markup is much more common on pages cited by AI than pages that aren't. So straight off the bat, the pages that are cited by AI often will have schema, but this is like the chicken and the egg, like what came first. Often, pages that...
Is it that those companies, those businesses have everything in place, and so they also have schema? Or
that's exactly what it is. Yeah. So oftentimes these are higher quality pages, obviously because they're being pulled, and they have all of the things that you would expect, including schema. So that's the first thing to think about. Now, when they added schema to pages, so they looked in the Ahrefs index, they found pages that didn't have schema, and then didn't have schema on a certain date, and then by another date they did have schema. So we tracked 1,885 web pages that added JSON-LD schema between August 2025 and March 2026. So they were able to analyze obviously all of the hundreds of thousands of millions of pages in their index. They were able to identify a bucket of pages that did not have schema before August 2025 up until March 2026, and then did have JSON-LD schema after that date. So they didn't actually go and add schema to pages. They were just able to analyze their index of pages that didn't have schema by a certain date and then did. And then obviously they were able to then analyze AI visibility, again, using their platform between those two buckets of pages.
Did they record? So I'm assuming they must have recorded a lot of data. Like, this is this prompt, here's who shows up. And then they ran the same prompts again, and then to see if any of those ones that didn't have schema and then added it were not showing, and then were showing the second time?
No, I think they just were using their AI visibility
their own
tool.
Okay.
Obviously, they had the historic data from the batches of pages that were pre the date that had schema, and then obviously the current pages. So what they found was no major uplift whatsoever, 2.2% more in ChatGPT, 2.24% more in Google AI mode, which is statistically insignificant, indistinguishable from zero. And then Google AIO, minus 4.6%. So actually, these pages performed worse.
It wasn't from the schema, I'm sure.
No. And again, this, although technically, mathematically, statistically significant, all of the pages that were tested were falling anyway. Both groups were declining together. Treated pages fell slightly faster. So what is interesting, AI overview pages dropped 4.6%. AI overview citations on treated pages fell by 4.6% relative to control pages. And it is mathematically, technically, statistically significant. But there are two things to keep in mind. It's a very small number, the sample size anyway, and the absolute size is small. So we're talking about an average loss of around 12 daily citations per page. If you have ever been into the Ahrefs tool and seen the little sort of number of AI citations across the different models, the numbers fluctuate wildly day to day, and 12 is a tiny number, insignificant. You could be minus 12 one day, plus 30. So that's something to consider. And then two, both treated and matched control pages were already on a steep downward trajectory before schema was added. And this is the kind of decline you'd expect from AI overviews pulling back from these specific types of content, not to do with schema. So AI overview pages dropped by 4.6%. And then they talk about how they isolated the text. So how they did the study. This is how they did the study. The last day our crawler checked the page and found no JSON. So they used their crawler, like I said, against those two batches of pages between those two different dates in order to delineate whether or not schema was present and whether or not it was present. And then they analyzed all of the data. And I think they talk about here how they use their new X agent tool in order to do it. So 4 separate tests all point in the same direction. And that is, while schema added either did have an effect on Google AI overviews and didn't on the other 2 models, it really is not significant at all. And it's hard to determine whether or not the pages that were actually showing as sourced by the AI models already in fact had schema because they were of a higher quality page than other pages. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Are you sold by this? In my opinion, the only way to like truly figure out if this, and I think this probably matters, the kind of content, the page type. Is this blog content? I don't see how that would have that big of a difference. Maybe service pages, that's where I could see, but I don't know. And then obviously the industry should have a huge impact. So the only way I would be, if I was going to completely write off schema, I'm not saying I'm sold on schema. I have no idea. Whenever we like work out the strategies, AI is always saying like, yes, we use schema AI models use schema to understand. What I would do if I was going to say, because in my opinion, it's not that hard to implement, so might as well do it. But if I was going to say it's not worth it, I'm not doing it, first, I would look at like the specific bottom of the funnel prompts, and like my site didn't have it, and I'd see where I stood, and then I would add it on the homepage and service pages and rerun that a month or 2 down the road and see if it had an impact. Because I feel like until you do the study of like this didn't have it, and then we added it, and we know exactly what pages we're looking at, and they're the pages we're focused on. The bottom of the funnel phrases we're focused on, and then you saw no impact, that's when I'd be like, okay, doesn't work.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it's one of those things that is causing like a lot of discussion with the industry. And I imagine in the grand scheme of things, it is probably inconsequential depending on other activities that you could be doing.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of those things where people are like, you have one group that are like, you have to test and we've seen it and it doesn't. And there's others. I mean, just recently in the past day, we've seen that Google is like deprecating its FAQ schema results. Schema Markdown. There was this really good study done as well, which Ahrefs references on the different types of data that is actually being read by LLMs. Personally, I mean, I've seen studies by someone like Stephen Toth, who did a study about 12 months ago where he put like, actually it might not have been Stephen Toth, might have been
I think he just goes by Steve Toth.
Steve
I think
Toth.
only his mother calls him Stephen
Toth.
Oh,
when he's in trouble.
Yeah.
Mark Williams Cook, I think it was, who we had on our podcast. He did a study where I think he put in schema, just like a completely made up location, as on a test page for a business. And then he just had the business location just in plain HTML on the site. And he asked AI, like, where is this business located? And it just pulled from the HTML. It didn't even look at the schema.
Didn't look at the schema.
Yeah. I don't know. I think a more interesting strategy potentially now is I've seen some people recently on social in the past week or so saying that they're trying to co-deliver all their pages in HTML and Markdown. That seems like it could be interesting. AI models seem to love Markdown. I don't know. It's probably not worth the effort to do or not do. If it's built into your SEO tool, like you've got Rank Math or Yoast.
For you,
Yeah.
But maybe the one spot where I would take a deeper look is the harder to understand things. So like one thing we've always recommended for with our PR agency is the sameAs. So if you have like someone on your staff, a writer, and they've written for their contributor to New York Times or whatever, you can use that sameAs schema markup to show, hey, this is the same person. And then you're trying to connect them to other places they are on the web so that Google understands it's the exact same person. That helps you kind of with that authority angle. So it could play out that way, where maybe it's important for harder to understand things. But like you said, if it can pull from the HTML, your business location, it doesn't need you to restate that in schema.
And actually, I suppose that's a really good point. One other thing that might be worth considering is, rather than spending a lot of time and effort thinking whether or not you should or you shouldn't have schema, is look at it as like a consensus of information task that you just need to make sure that isn't like conflicting. So let's say you have historically had schema on your site and you've changed things like your business opening hours or, different things like that. And then you have, an AI info page that has conflicting information to what you've got in your schema. That can then go to cause problems. So it potentially is something worth considering as a preventative step for visibility. Okay.